What feels good is fine. Who cares if other people think it's immoral? My name is Amy, I'm 22 years old. I am an only child raised by my mother, Sarah, who separated from my father when I was only 5 years old. I have always adored my mom, as she was like a superhero to me who could do anything for me. So when Dave came into our lives about 6 years ago, I felt like my universe had been shattered. First, my mom's attention was no longer focused on me, and I had to learn to share it with my new stepdad. Second, having a man in the house changed my privacy with my mom, as I had to be more modest and not flaunt my body. But to be honest, everything changed when I happened to see them doing something in their room. Dave was younger than my mother, about 40 years old, while she was in her early 50s. His body was well maintained, and as a 20-year-old girl, I regularly admired his fine figure. However, seeing him in a birthday suit was akin to a dream. At the time, I had a good understanding of how relationships work, but I never realized what I observed online. I had never had a partner or anything like that at the time, so this was my first opportunity to try it. And I didn't find it horrible or unpleasant. It was attractive and something that I definitely wanted to try. My undeveloped body couldn't fully comprehend the sensations that seemed to mess with my head, but every touch of his fingers felt like a slice of heaven in my mouth. I breathed heavily as I remembered spying on my mother and stepfather and felt my core erupt after harmless play. That, no doubt, is what led to my fully accepting Dave into our little family. My mom was happy with her young daughter's acceptance of the man she called the love of her life. When I saw how happy my mom was, I could only smile, but deep down I just wanted to see something that made my mind soar. The years went by, and when I turned 22, I got into many relationships. They were all different guys from different walks of life that I invited into the house to try and achieve the same result. None of them could make me feel the same way at first, but when Dave caught me doing it, I knew what had to be done. So, as if it was a ritual, I left the door open when I did it with my partner, hoping my stepfather would see what he had indirectly taught me. However, all I got from him was a lecture that I shouldn't bring my boyfriends home, much less leave the door open when I was doing it with them. He also advised me not to invite people who can't afford a hotel room. Do you believe those are the kind of guys your mom would want to spend the rest of her life with? I said no, letting fake tears roll down my cheeks. Then take more responsibility, Amy. My stepfather had always been a responsible guy, deeply committed to my mother and the house we'd built, so I hadn't expected a different reaction. However, I wanted Dave's attention and got annoyed when I couldn't, but who knew the chance would present itself in the most unexpected way. That night, before falling asleep, I went down to the kitchen for a midnight snack. Dave seemed to be chatting on the phone, which didn't surprise me, considering he was such an outgoing guy that he could talk on the phone for hours. However, that day was different. The way he talked reminded me of his tone with Emma. The level of collusion he seemed to have with this person was so high that I chose to remain silent and pay close attention. Does this sound familiar to you? Do you realize you can't call earlier? Dave let out a short chuckle. Hush, honey, you're going to make me laugh out loud. I froze and tried to take a deep breath so I wouldn't jump to conclusions. My stepfather asked, "What are you saying?" Emma isn't like that. My breathing stopped briefly and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I thought, this can't be happening. Dave whispered, "She won't want her father back. Don't you realize how much she loves me?" A sigh escaped my lips and I hurried to my room. As I climbed the stairs of our house, I tried to calm my breathing while thinking about the situation. My stepfather had cheated on my mother while she, the supposed love of his life, was asleep. This revelation changed my perspective significantly, because watching him act friendly and loving toward Emma while knowing he was cheating on her made my stomach churn. At the time, I didn't think my mother deserved it. After all, she had given Dave a chance. The way they chatted casually told me that this wasn't the first time, and that these topics weren't the most innocuous in the world. I spent many days weighing my surprise and sadness before I decided that no matter what happened, I would always support my mother. I knew I couldn't let Emma spend her life with a guy who didn't appreciate her, so I decided to get back at him, but in a more concrete way than anyone could have guessed. It was Friday and my mom said she was going to be late for a business dinner. It was the perfect moment to show my cards, so I reread the information on my phone one more time before heading to both of our bedrooms where my stepdad was typing away on the computer. "Dave," I said at the entrance to his room. He quickly turned his chair around and greeted me. I could feel his eyes widen as they moved over my body and his Adam's apple became more and more prominent. I realized that wearing a short skirt and a t-shirt that exposed my stomach was the best way to accomplish my goal. Although Dave had always presented himself as a serious and polite man, once I realized his secret, it was easier to understand why he was attracted to anyone who looked ambiguous. "What's wrong?" he asked with his usual sincerity. I bit my lower lip and ran my hands over my stomach, feigning concern. "There's something I need to tell you." "What's wrong? Is it about your mother?" I walked into the room and shook my head. "It concerns you." When he took a step away from his chair, I took the cell phone off my hip and raised it to his eye level. As I watched the video, the colors on Dave's face flashed and he could hardly say anything. It was a complete recording of my stepfather's intimate phone conversation with his girlfriend, which I had captured in its entirety on my phone and which would undoubtedly serve as material for my own investigation. "Hey, Amy, what's this?" he said, stuttering. "So why do you have this?" "I know your little secret," I said, smiling. "Your mom?" I pulled out my cell phone and paused the video, saying, "My mom doesn't know anything." "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" I rhetorically replied. "Because I know. Finding out the truth will hurt her deeply." There were many seconds of silence, in which we heard only our own breathing. His gaze was fixed on me, and mine was focused on memorizing every detail of him. This wasn't Dave, my perfect stepfather. This was a guy who had a collapsed curtain and had to strive to raise it again, or his theatrical endeavors would cease at that moment. "You're not sincere." "You know me well," I said, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. "What do you want?" He spoke bluntly. I replied, sighing and sinking down on the bed. "Just look at me," I asked, "and I'll erase the footage." The zipper on my skirt slid smoothly down my legs as I deftly lowered it. My pulse quickened as I saw Dave's lips open wide and a blush appear on his cheeks. It was exactly what I'd been looking for, and I finally got it. I inserted 2 fingers into my lips, moistening them under his gaze. Then those same fingers traveled downward, landing where I wanted them to, and began soft circular motions that elicited a few sounds from my lips. "Are you out of your mind?" he exclaimed. I giggled, keeping my hands down and keeping my eyes on him. Despite his obvious amazement, I could tell from his pupils that he was enjoying what he was watching. It encouraged me to keep doing what I was doing, speeding up my circles and getting closer to the cloud of feelings that was beginning to surround me. "You're doing it wrong," he said sharply, snatching my hand away just when I thought I might burst. I gasped in surprise when I saw his hand in that spot. Dave's fingertips gave me a warmth that none of my ex-boyfriends could match. His abilities seemed supernatural. Waves of sensation intoxicated my body, making my legs tingle and my thoughts muddle. I thought that was enough, but Dave grabbed my hands and led me to the middle of the bed. He informed me that if I wanted to accomplish anything, I had to do it right. At that moment, his lips merged with mine in a frenzied kiss, and one of his hands gripped my chin firmly. The pressure I was exerting caused some pain, but I didn't let myself complain as I was getting more than I wanted at first. We moved with such speed that he was quickly thrusting into me. At this point, in the room I shared with my mom, I felt like I was being ripped out of my body from everything Dave was doing to me, and the most incomprehensible words were pouring from my lips. It was crazy, but what many had been trying to do for months, my stepfather accomplished in one night. When we were done, he asked me to erase the video I had made, since he had already fulfilled his part of the deal we hadn't signed. I grinned, deleting the video I showed him, even though he didn't know it was one of several I'd gotten by spying on him to find out the truth. Those movies were my insurance policy in case I got what I wanted, so it was only natural to delete them after fulfilling a long-held desire. However, after spending the night with Dave, I became a little picky about what I wanted from him. That's why, despite my vows, I would return to his room at night when we were alone to show him the tapes that could end his relationship with Emma. His facial expression seemed serious as usual, but after a few times, I could see through it and see him enjoying our little game in which he pretended to be outraged and frightened. I felt I had the power, but in the end my stepfather revealed that he was the one who was the mastermind behind the conspiracy. What do you think about all this? I realize what I did was wrong, but I let myself get emotional all the time and it could have gotten out of hand. I hope you won't judge me too harshly for my tendencies.